We did it! We actually did it!
But you didn't buy anything.
Because I said no!
You lied to me.
Amanda Johnson slammed her laptop shut so hard the coffee cups rattled on the table, and every person still inside Haru Cafe turned to look at her. "Say that again?" she said, her voice low and shaking. "Say it again, slowly, because I want to make sure I heard you correctly." Junho Ken stood behind the counter with a dishcloth in his hand, and across from Amanda, seated with her legs crossed and her expression perfectly composed, Sua lifted her coffee cup and took a slow, unhurried sip. "I said," Sua repeated, "that my company is prepared to make this very easy for everyone." Junho signs the release, walks away with a settlement that clears his mother's debts, and the building comes down in the spring. He gets money, I get my project, and you get to fly home to Los Angeles without any of this on your conscience. The cafe had gone completely silent. Mrs. O at her corner table had stopped pretending to read her newspaper. The two part-time students behind the counter were staring, and Amanda, who had spent the last 11 days doing everything humanly possible to save this cafe, felt something inside her chest go very cold and very still. "You want him to sign away his mother's cafe," she said, "and you're calling that a favor?" Sua smiled. "I'm calling it reality. You've been here 3 weeks. I was with him for 3 years. One of us actually knows what he can survive. If you are ready to watch this woman get everything she deserves, you need to smash that subscribe button right now, hit that like button, and comment the word receipts, because what happens over the next 25 minutes is going to have you screaming, and I want to see every single one of you in that comment section when it does." 19 days earlier, Junho had received the message that changed everything. 30 days to buy the lease outright, or Haru Cafe closed for good. 19 days had passed since then, 11 remained, and in those 19 days, Amanda had learned exactly how much a person could do when they refused to accept that something was impossible. It had started the morning after, at 6 in the morning, with Amanda sitting cross-legged on the storage room couch, surrounded by every piece of paper Junho owned: lease documents, bank statements, 3 years of receipts kept in a shoebox because his mother had never trusted computers. Amanda had built a business from nothing with a ring light and stubbornness, and she knew how to read a mess. "Okay," she'd said when Junho came up with 2 mugs of tea and the resigned expression of a man about to be told exactly how doomed he was. "It's bad, but it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. No, it isn't." She'd turned the laptop toward him. "You've been running this place like a memorial. You've been terrified to change one single thing because your mother chose it. Same 4 songs, same 6 items on the menu, same opening hours she set in 2009. Junho, you have 400,000 people watching this cafe online right now, and you're closing at 6 in the evening because that's what she did 15 years ago." Junho had gone very quiet. "That's not fair." "It's completely fair, and you know it." Amanda had softened her voice. "I'm not saying she was wrong. I'm saying she opened this place in a neighborhood nobody visited, for customers who lived on this street. That's not the cafe you have anymore. You have a cafe people are flying to Seoul to sit in, and you're turning them away at 6 because grief made you scared to touch anything she touched." The silence had stretched so long that Amanda had thought she'd broken something between them permanently. Then Junho had set down his tea and said quietly, "What would you change?" Everything, as it turned out. They extended the hours to 10 at night. They added a small evening menu, 3 things only, all of them things his mother had actually made at home and never sold. Amanda filmed the whole process and posted it in pieces, and the pieces exploded because the internet did not want a polished cafe tour. The internet wanted a man in an apron being talked into surviving. Within 6 days, Haru Cafe was doing more business in a week than it had done in the previous 2 months combined. Within 9, there was a queue down the alley at 11 in the morning. Tourists came with printed screenshots of Amanda's videos. Locals came because the neighborhood had become interesting. Mrs. O came at the same time she always had, ordered the same Americano she always had, and complained loudly and constantly about the crowds while showing absolutely no signs of going anywhere else. "You've ruined this place," she told Amanda on day 8, gesturing to the packed room with obvious delight. "I used to sit here in peace. Now I sit here with 40 foreigners and a queue. Terrible. I'll be here tomorrow." But none of it was enough, and both of them knew it, because a cafe doing well and a cafe that could produce a lease buyout in 3 weeks were completely different animals, and every night after closing, Amanda and Junho sat at the same small table with the same spreadsheet and watched the same number refuse to move fast enough. "We're at maybe a third," Amanda said, rubbing her eyes. "Best case, if every day between now and the deadline is as good as today." Junho stared at the screen. "So we're not going to make it." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He pushed back from the table and stood, walking to the window, looking out at the dark street. "Amanda, at some point one of us has to say it out loud. We have done everything. You have worked 18-hour days for a cafe you don't own, in a country you were supposed to leave 3 weeks ago, for a man who has nothing to offer you back, and it's still not going to be enough. Don't. What? Don't do the thing where you decide it's over so it hurts less when it's over." Amanda's voice cracked. "I know that trick. I've done that trick. Give up before you can be disappointed, and then call it being realistic." Junho turned around, and the look on his face was something she hadn't seen before. Not sadness, anger. "My mother did everything right," he said. "For 11 years, she did everything right. She opened early, she closed late, she remembered every regular's order, she gave free food to students who couldn't pay, and when she got sick, she kept working because she was afraid the cafe would close if she stopped. She died in a hospital bed apologizing to me for the debt. So forgive me if I don't believe that working hard enough fixes it. I watched it not fix it." The silence afterward was terrible. Amanda crossed the room slowly, and she didn't touch him, and she didn't tell him he was wrong. "Okay," she said instead, "then let's stop trying to fix it the way she would have. Let's do something she never had." Junho looked at her warily. "Meaning what?" "Meaning 400,000 people are watching this cafe, and I've never once asked them for anything." The crowdfund went live at 9 the next morning. Amanda had spent the entire night on it, and she had done it properly because she had spent 2 years learning exactly how the internet worked and exactly how fast it would turn on someone who got it wrong. No sob story, no manipulation, just the facts laid out plainly. A small cafe, a lease sale, a deadline, a target number, and a promise that every single contributor would be listed on a wall inside the cafe if it survived. She filmed the announcement standing behind the counter with Junho beside her, and she made him speak, which took 20 minutes of arguing and 3 failed takes because he kept apologizing to the camera. "Don't say sorry," Amanda hissed between takes. "You have nothing to be sorry for." "I'm asking strangers for money." "You're offering strangers a reason to be part of something. Those are not the same thing. Say it again." On the fourth take, Junho looked directly into the lens and said in careful English, "My mother built this place. I have kept it for 3 years, badly, and mostly alone. If it closes, that is the end of 11 years of her life. I am not good at asking for help. I am asking anyway." Amanda posted it and then turned her phone face down on the counter because she couldn't watch. It hit the target in 14 hours. It hit twice the target in 22. Amanda actually screamed. She screamed in the middle of the cafe at 4 in the afternoon in front of 30 customers, and then she grabbed Junho by both arms and shook him while he stood there with an expression of total incomprehension. And then Mrs. O started clapping, and then the entire cafe started clapping, and 2 of the tourists started crying, and Junho looked around the room at all of it with the dazed face of a man who had genuinely never once considered that this might work. "We did it," Amanda said. "Junho, we actually did it." And Junho, who had not cried at his mother's funeral because he'd been too busy managing it, sat down heavily on a stool and put his face in his hands and cried in front of a room full of strangers. Amanda knelt down in front of him and put her hands over his, and neither of them said anything for a long moment. 211,000 people, she said finally. That's how many watched that video and decided your mother's cafe should exist. 211,000 people who have never met you. Why? Junho's voice was wrecked. I don't understand why. Because you asked. That's it. That's the whole thing. You stood there and you were honest, and you didn't perform any of it, and people can tell. People can always tell. She squeezed his hands. You've spent 3 years thinking needing help makes you a burden. You just proved the exact opposite in 14 hours. That night, after closing, they didn't look at the spreadsheet. They sat on the floor behind the counter with the lights off and a bottle of something Junho's mother had kept in the back for 11 years for an occasion that never came, and Amanda made him tell her about her. He'd never done it before, not properly. He talked for 2 hours about a woman who sang badly and constantly, who once chased a man down the alley for stealing a bag of beans and then gave him breakfast, who refused to learn how to use a computer out of what Junho was fairly sure was pure spite, about the year she sold her wedding ring to make rent, and how he told him it was at the jeweler's for cleaning, and how he'd only worked out the truth when he was 24. I'm angry with her, he said, somewhere near the end, in the dark. That's the part I can't say to anyone. Everyone talks about her like she was a saint, and she was a good person, and I am so angry at her. She knew she was sick for 8 months before she told me. 8 months. She could have had treatment. She chose to keep the cafe open instead, and she left me the bill, and she never once asked what I wanted. Amanda was quiet for a moment. Can I say something you won't like? Probably. You're doing the same thing to Yuna, she said, being fine every night for 3 years so she doesn't worry, carrying it alone so nobody has to help. Junho, you're angry at your mother for the exact thing you do every single day. Junho didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, very quietly, That's the worst thing anyone has ever said to me. I know. You're right, though. I know. And in the dark, she felt him laugh. If that got you, comment the word crowdfund right now because I want to see how many of you would have donated to save this man's cafe. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now because I promise you the celebration does not last, and what walks through that door next is going to make you furious. The problem arrived 4 days later, and it arrived wearing an ivory blazer. Amanda was restocking cups when the bell rang, and she knew before she turned around because the cafe's noise level dropped by half the way it only ever did for one person. Congratulations, Suwa said. Genuinely. 211,000 people. That's remarkable. You should be very proud. Thank you, Amanda said carefully. I mean it. Suwa set her bag on the counter. I saw the video. He was good in it, honest. He was never able to do that when I asked him to. Something flickered across her face, gone almost immediately. Is he here? He's on a delivery run. Then I'll talk to you instead. That's probably better anyway. Sua smiled, and Amanda felt the temperature in her chest drop. You raised the money, but you didn't buy anything. Do you understand the difference? Amanda said nothing. The lease sale isn't an auction, Amanda. It's a private transaction between the current owner and a buyer. The owner told Juno he could match. He never said the owner was obligated to accept. Sua opened her bag, took out a slim folder, and set it on the counter without opening it. My company offered 40% above market for the entire block, 6 buildings. We've had signed agreements on 4 of them since March. The blood drained out of Amanda's face. You knew, she said. When you walked in here 3 weeks ago and stood there acting like you'd come for old time's sake, you already knew you were taking this building. I flagged the block 8 months ago, before I knew he was still here. I didn't take this job to hurt him, but I'm not going to pretend I didn't know either, and I'm not going to apologize for doing my job well. She pushed the folder an inch closer. That's the settlement offer. It's more than fair. It clears the debt his mother left, and it leaves him enough to open somewhere else, somewhere with better foot traffic and a lease he actually owns. He doesn't want somewhere else. I know. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? He doesn't want anything except to stand in his dead mother's cafe, making the same coffee she made until he's 60, and everyone around him keeps calling that devotion instead of what it actually is. And what is it? Hiding, Sua said. Amanda's hands had curled into fists on the counter without her noticing. Get out, she said quietly. Amanda, don't you get to walk in here and call his grief a character flaw. You left, that was your right, but you don't get to leave a man and then come back and demolish the last thing he has and call it helping him. Amanda's voice was shaking now. Take your folder and get out of this cafe. Sua picked up the folder. At the door, she stopped. He'll take the money, she said, not because he's weak, because in 11 days he's going to look at that number and realize he can't win, and he will choose the outcome that lets him stop fighting. I know him, Amanda. That's the whole tragedy. I know him, and you're only just learning him, and I'm still going to be right. She left. Amanda stood behind the counter for a long moment, and then she went into the back room and cried where nobody could see her. She didn't tell Juno. That was the mistake. She would think about it later, over and over, and she would never be able to fully explain why she made it, except that he had cried in front of 30 strangers 4 days ago out of relief, and she could not stand to be the person who took that away. So she said nothing, and she started making calls instead. She called a property lawyer whose number a subscriber sent her. She called 2 Korean-American business reporters. She called a Seoul City Councilor's office about neighborhood preservation grants, and she spent an entire afternoon on hold, and she got nowhere, and she called back the next morning and got nowhere again. And every night she sat across from Juno and smiled and said things were fine. He noticed. Of course he noticed. You're doing the thing, he said, on the 6th night, not looking up from the register. What thing? The thing where you talk more than usual, so I don't ask what's wrong. He closed the drawer. You did it the first night, in the rain. You talked for 20 minutes without stopping, because if you stopped, I might ask a question you didn't want to answer. Amanda's heart clenched. That's not what I'm doing. Okay, Juno said, and let it go, which was so much worse than if he'd pushed. The thing that finally broke it open wasn't Sua. It was an email. It arrived on a Tuesday at 2:30 in the afternoon while Amanda was steaming milk, and she read it 4 times standing at the counter before she fully understood what she was looking at. A production company, a real one with a name she recognized, the kind that made the travel documentaries she'd watched as a teenager and told herself she'd make one day. They had seen the Seoul videos, all of them. They wanted to talk about a series. 12 episodes, fully funded, a proper crew, her name on it as host and co-producer, filming across 4 continents starting in 6 weeks. The number in the budget line was more money than Amanda had made in 2 years of doing this alone. She read it a 5th time. Then she put her phone in her apron pocket, and she finished the drink she was making, and she smiled at the customer and said, "Have a good day," and she did not tell anyone. That night, she video called Deja and said it out loud for the first time. "You're kidding me," Deja was screaming, actually screaming. "Amanda, Amanda, do you know how long you have wanted exactly this? Do you know how many times I have sat on this call listening to you say, if I just get one real production company to look at me?" "I know. Then why do you look like someone died?" Amanda didn't answer. Deja's face changed. "Oh," she said. "Oh, girl, no. Don't. You're seriously sitting there thinking about turning down the thing you have wanted your entire adult life for a man you've known for 4 weeks who has never once said out loud that he wants you to stay? That's not—" Amanda stopped, because it was exactly. "The cafe has 11 days. If I leave now—" "The cafe is not yours, Amanda. I know that. Do you?" Deja leaned closer to the camera and her voice went gentle in a way that was somehow worse than shouting. "Because from where I'm sitting, you got stranded, you got scared, a nice man was kind to you, and you have spent 4 weeks building yourself a whole entire life inside somebody else's emergency. And I love you, so I'm going to be the one who says it. What happens to you when that cafe closes and there's nothing left for you to save?" Amanda ended the call. She sat in the dark storage room for a long time afterward, and then she went downstairs at midnight, and Junho was still there, sitting at the small table with the spreadsheet open and the same number that would not move. She almost told him. She got as far as saying his name. And then he looked up at her and smiled, tired and unguarded, and said, "We're at 61%, Amanda. We're at 61%. 2 weeks ago, I thought I was going to lose everything." And she said, "That's amazing," and sat down beside him and said nothing at all. If you are yelling at your screen right now, good, that's the correct response. So drop a comment and tell me, should she have told him about the offer that same night? Yes or no? I want to see this comment section split down the middle. And hit subscribe because the misunderstanding that is coming next is the one that breaks them. Yuna arrived on day 23. Junho's younger sister came through the door of Haru Cafe for the first time in 3 years, stood in the entrance in her university hoodie with a duffel bag over one shoulder, and burst into tears at the sight of the room. "It looks the same," she kept saying while Junho held her. "Oppa, it looks exactly the same." She stayed 4 days. She was funny and sharp, and about 70% more direct than her brother, and she took to Amanda immediately and completely, which Amanda had not expected and did not entirely know how to handle. "He's happy," Yuna told her on the second night, while they closed up together and Junho was upstairs. "I need you to understand how strange that is. I have called that man every night for 3 years, every single night. He has been fine every single night. Do you know how exhausting it is to love someone who is always fine?" "I have some idea," said Amanda. "Then you understand why I'm going to ask you something rude." Yuna set down the chair she was stacking. "Are you staying?" Amanda opened her mouth and nothing came out. "That's what I thought," Yuna said, not unkindly. "Okay, then can I ask you to do one thing? When you go, tell him properly. Don't do the thing where you get smaller and quieter for 2 weeks until leaving looks like a natural conclusion instead of a choice. He'll let you do that. He'll let you disappear politely, and then he'll decide it was his fault. Make him hear it. He deserves to be told he's being left." Amanda's eyes were burning. "I haven't decided anything." "Okay," Yuna said, in exactly her brother's voice. The misunderstanding happened on day 25, and it happened the way these things always happen, which is to say it was almost nothing. Amanda came back from the bank at 4 in the afternoon, and through the front window of Haru Café, she saw them. Junho and Suwa sitting at the corner table, Suwa's hand on his forearm, Junho leaning toward her, saying something with an expression Amanda had never seen him wear, something raw and open and unbearably intimate. A folder on the table between them. And as Amanda stood frozen on the pavement, she watched Junho pick up a pen. She didn't go in. She stood there for 10 full seconds, and then she walked around the block, and by the time she came back through the door, Suwa was gone, and Junho was behind the counter wiping a machine that didn't need it. "Good bank?" he asked. "Fine." Amanda hung up her jacket with hands that weren't quite steady. "Was someone here?" She watched him hesitate. She watched him decide. "No," Junho said. "Quiet afternoon." Something inside Amanda went very calm and very cold. "Right," she said. For the next 36 hours, they were unfailingly polite to each other, which was the worst thing either of them had ever done. Amanda worked her shifts, she filmed her segments, she smiled at customers and laughed at Mrs. O's jokes, and answered Junho's questions in complete, pleasant sentences that contained absolutely nothing. And Junho, who had spent 3 years perfecting the art of being fine, matched her exactly, because it was the only language he was truly fluent in. Yuna watched it happen over one entire dinner and finally slammed her chopsticks down. "What is wrong with you two?" "Nothing," they said, in perfect unison. Yuna left the next morning and she hugged Amanda at the door and said into her ear, "Whatever you think you saw, ask him. He is the single worst person alive at volunteering information, and he will genuinely, sincerely believe he is protecting you." Amanda didn't ask him. Instead, on day 27, she opened her laptop at 2 in the morning and replied to the production company and said yes. She told herself it was the sensible thing. She told herself she'd been offered the entire career she'd built 2 years toward, and had turned down nothing but a fantasy. She told herself the crowdfund was at 70%, and that number was not going to become 100 in 3 days, and she watched him choose Suwa's folder over telling her the truth. She cried while she typed it. She hit send anyway. And at 9 the next morning, Junho came downstairs, holding his phone, his face completely white, and said, "Amanda, have you seen this?" The post had gone up at 6 in the morning on a Korean forum, and by 9 it had been screenshotted and translated and pushed onto every platform where anyone had ever heard of Haru Café. It alleged that the crowdfund was a scam. It alleged that the American woman behind it had targeted a grieving small business owner, manufactured a fake eviction crisis for content, and was preparing to leave the country with 200,000 people's money. It included a photograph of Amanda outside a bank. It included a screenshot of her replying to a production company about relocating for a new project. And it included at the very bottom a line about how the cafe's own accounts showed a settlement offer already under negotiation, which meant the owner knew the whole time that the crowdfund was unnecessary. The comments were already in the thousands. Amanda read it standing in Haru Café at 9 in the morning with the queue already forming outside, and every single thing in it was technically devastatingly true, and every single thing in it was a lie. Her phone would not stop. It buzzed in her apron pocket so continuously that it stopped feeling like separate notifications and started feeling like one long vibration. And when she finally pulled it out, the number on her inbox had 5 digits. She made the mistake of reading them. Some were people asking, reasonably, for an explanation. Most were not. Some of them were about the money, and most of them, underneath, were not about the money at all. And by the 40th comment, Amanda had stopped being able to tell the difference between the people who thought she was a fraud and the people who had simply been waiting for a reason. Refund requests started coming in within the hour, then emails from 2 brands that had signed with her in the last fortnight, both using the same phrase, both wanting to pause until things were clearer. Then a message from a journalist asking for comment by end of day, which was not a question so much as a countdown. And outside, the queue kept forming, because most of the people standing in that alley had not seen any of it yet, and they were still cheerfully waiting for coffee in a cafe that was quietly coming apart from the inside. Amanda, one of the students behind the counter, was holding up her phone, white-faced. There are people filming outside, 4 of them. Amanda looked through the window and saw it. 3 phones raised, pointed at the storefront, and one man standing close to the glass with his camera aimed directly through it at her. "Amanda," Junho said. She looked up at him, and she watched in real time the exact moment the doubt entered his face. It was there for less than a second. He killed it immediately, and she knew he killed it, and it did not matter even slightly, because she had seen it. "You think it's true," she said. "No, Amanda, no." You hesitated. "For 1 second, because I am reading that my mother's cafe is a scam on a phone at 9 in the morning. You met with her." Amanda's voice rose, and the students behind the counter went very still. "You 2 days ago. You sat at that table with Sua and a folder and a pen, and you looked me in the face and told me it was a quiet afternoon." Junho went rigid. "You saw that?" "I saw all of it." "Then why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I said no." It came out as a shout, and Junho was not a man who shouted, and the entire cafe heard it. He lowered his voice immediately, shaking. "She came with the settlement. She said if I signed it, she would make sure the crowdfund money went back to every person who gave it, so that nobody would lose anything when we failed. And I sat there and I thought about it, Amanda. I thought about it for 20 minutes, because it was the only version where nobody else got hurt. And then I said no, and I told her not to come back." "You picked up the pen." "I picked up the pen and I put it down." "And then you lied to me about all of it." "Because I have not told you one true thing in 11 days. The cafe was absolutely silent. Junho's chest was heaving. "You think I don't notice. You stopped talking. You who talked for 20 minutes in the rain to a stranger. You have been standing next to me for a week and a half being pleasant. I did not ask because every time I have asked, you have said fine, and I know exactly what fine means because I have been saying it to my sister every night for 3 years. Amanda's eyes were streaming. "So no," Junho said, quieter now, "I did not tell you about the folder, because I have spent 4 weeks watching you throw your entire life into a building that is not yours, for a person who cannot pay you back, and I have been waiting every single day for you to come to your senses, and I did not want to be the one who handed you the reason." The words hit her exactly as hard as he had not intended them to. "I got an offer," Amanda said. Junho went completely still. 9 days ago, a production company, 12 episodes, 4 continents, my name on it. Her voice broke completely. "I said yes last night, at 2 in the morning, 2 hours before somebody screenshotted it and told the entire internet I was robbing you." The look on his face was the worst thing she had ever seen. Not anger, not betrayal, recognition, as though something he had privately expected from the beginning had finally, mercifully arrived. "Okay," Junho said. "Don't say okay. What would you like me to say?" He set his phone down on the counter very carefully, like it might break. "You should take it. It's what you came here to build. It is the thing you told me about at 1 in the morning on the first night, when you sat at that counter and said you'd quit a job you hated because you wanted to see the world. I'm not going to be the reason you stop." "Junho." "You have 11 days, Junho said. 11 days and a crowdfund that is going to have to be refunded, and my mother's cafe is going to close in the spring anyway. And none of that is your fault, and none of it is your responsibility, and I think we both knew that from the beginning. Please stop." "You should go and pack," Junho said gently. "I'll close today. I think that's better." He turned around and walked into the back room and shut the door. Amanda stood in the middle of the cafe for about 4 seconds. Then she untied her apron, dropped it on the counter, walked out the front door past the men with their phones, and got in a taxi. The office was on the 11th floor of a glass tower in Gangnam, and Amanda talked her way past reception by the simple method of refusing to leave, and when Sua came out into the lobby 20 minutes later, her face was genuinely, completely surprised. "You wrote it," Amanda said. "No. Somebody had access to the cafe's accounts. Somebody knew about a settlement offer that 3 people on this earth knew about." Amanda's voice was low and level. "So you wrote it, or you handed the pieces to someone who did." Sua stood very still for a moment. She said, "I told my director he refused the offer. That is all I said. I said the owner refused and the acquisition would need to proceed without him." She swallowed. "I did not know what he would do with that." "You didn't know," Amanda repeated. "I have been doing this for 11 years, Amanda. There is a way these things get done, and I have never once been the person who does it, and I have also never once been the person who stops it." For the first time, Sua looked genuinely, badly shaken. "So no, I did not write it, and yes, it exists because of me." "He said no to you," Amanda said. "He sat at that table and he thought about it for 20 minutes because he wanted nobody else to get hurt, and then he said no, and you went upstairs and reported it like a line item. That is my job. Then your job just told the entire internet that a woman who has never stolen anything in her life is a thief." Amanda's voice finally cracked. "You wanted to know which one of us actually knows what he can survive. Here's my answer. He survived his mother. He survived you leaving. He'll survive the cafe. What I don't think he survives is finding out the person he loved for 3 years did this and called it business." Sua's composure broke entirely. "Get out," she said, quietly. "Please." Amanda got out. If your heart is on the floor right now, comment the word ouch, because I need to know I'm not suffering alone, and subscribe right now because episode 3 is where every single thing you think you know about this story gets turned upside down, and I mean every single thing. Amanda packed that night. It took 40 minutes because she had arrived with 1 suitcase and had somehow never unpacked it properly, which held, standing in that storage room at 11 at night, like the most damning fact about her entire time in Seoul. She was zipping it closed when there was a knock on the doorframe. Mrs. O stood at the top of the stairs, in her cardigan, holding a plastic container. "He's downstairs pretending to do inventory," she said. "He has counted the same shelf 4 times. Amanda's throat closed. "I brought food. Sit down." "Mrs. O, I don't." "Sit down." Amanda sat. Mrs. O lowered herself onto the couch beside her with the deliberate care of a woman in her 70s who intended to be listened to. "I have been coming to this cafe for 9 years," she said. "I came when his mother was alive. I came the week she died, and there was a sign on the door for 11 days, and then that boy opened it again by himself and stood behind that counter and said good morning to me like nothing had happened." She set the container down. "I have watched him be alone in this room for 3 years, and then a girl got caught in the rain, and I watched him become a person again. He asked me to leave." "Yes," Mrs. O said, "because he is convinced that everything good is temporary, and it is safer to end it himself than to wait for it. It is a very stupid way to live, and I have never been able to talk him out of it." Amanda was crying openly now. "I don't know what to do," she said. "I got everything I ever wanted, and it came 9 days too late, and I don't know how to want both." Mrs. O patted her knee. "Then let me tell you the only useful thing I know," she said. "I have buried a husband. I have watched a friend die of the thing that killed his mother, and I have never once, not one single time, regretted a thing I was brave enough to say. I have only ever regretted the things I was polite enough to leave unsaid." She stood, slowly, and picked up her handbag. "Your flight is not until when?" "Thursday." "Then you have 2 days. Do not waste them being dignified." She left. Amanda sat alone in the storage room for a long time, and then she picked up her phone and she opened her laptop, and instead of going downstairs, she did something else entirely. She started reading. Every document, every scanned page in that shoebox, every clause of a lease agreement written in a language she could not read, run line by line through 3 different translation tools at 2 in the morning, cross-checked against a property law explainer a subscriber had sent her 9 days ago and she had never opened. At 4:17 in the morning, Amanda Johnson stopped scrolling. She read the same paragraph 4 times. Then she sat back very slowly, put both hands over her mouth, and said out loud to an empty room, "Oh my God." Downstairs, Junho was still counting the same shelf. She came down the stairs so fast she nearly fell, laptop clutched against her chest, and he looked up with an expression of tired resignation that broke her heart. "Amanda, it's 4 in the morning. Your mother didn't rent this building," Amanda said. Junho stared at her. "What?" "She didn't rent it." Amanda set the laptop on the counter with shaking hands and turned it toward him and pointed at the paragraph. "Junho, in 2014 she signed something, and it isn't a lease. Read it. Read what she signed." Junho leaned over the screen, and Amanda watched his face change. Comment right now and tell me what you think that document is. I want every single theory, because episode 3 opens exactly here, and I promise you, nobody is ready for what his mother did in 2014. Drop a like if this episode wrecked you, subscribe so you do not miss the finale, and I will see you in episode 3 of Seoul Café Love.